This is the April 2nd meeting of the Monroe County Board of Elections. And I would like to call the meeting to order. Could we have an approval of the outstanding minutes from the previous meeting?
I don't believe we actually have minutes from the last meeting, at least not that I could find.
Okay.
So we should be up to date.
Can I make a motion to table that until next month's meeting?
Please do.
I will second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Probably since some of us are working on the phone, we should also state our name when we vote, just for the record. This meeting is being recorded by CATS, so everyone should be aware that we are going to be on video and audio on CATS as soon as this is done, or as soon as they get it posted. Preparations for the 2020 primary election. Karen, could you speak to us about the recruitment of volunteers and training?
Okay, we have, oh, this is Karen.
Okay, now you see
And,
the window.
okay, and so our recruiting has started. We've been working on that. The office has done a good chunk of it. Of course, at this point, we're having great difficulty in knowing what's really going to happen. Are we really going to have early voting? You're actually talking about recruiting for election day, though. So it is moving forward.
Okay.
There's people that are hesitant, of course, to commit to this because of what's going on. So
I know that other organizations have been able to recruit from people who unfortunately were laid off or lost their jobs, and that has been a fertile ground for recruitment. So that might be another area we can consider.
actually, some of the Republicans on early voting have indicated that they would be willing to work for early voting.
Okay.
But the semantics of having early voting is just so difficult. How do you keep 6 feet apart? And how do we keep our workers safe? How do we keep our voters safe? It's just pretty mind-boggling.
It is. It is. And in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the what the state has allowed us to do. But how would you say the recruitment is going, given that we have a primary election on June 2nd?
When my staff had the job of recruiting, it was going extremely well. As at this point, I have a Democratic and a Republican recruiter that's doing it from their home. And it's been a little bit harder to get communication with that. So I really don't know how they have done. We were doing a really good job, but I know it's easier at the beginning than it is when you're trying to fill up the spaces. They have not let me know what's really going on at this point. And I think they're just kind of confused too of what are we really going to be doing?
Right. I think we have every expectation of having as normal a vote as possible given the circumstances. By June 2nd, we'll be a month past the government stated shutdown or stay at home. That should be a month behind us by the time the election comes up. We'll have to see, because if conditions don't merit it, then that'll be extended and we'll have to go to plan B, whatever that is. But,
and with that recruitment, we're
yeah.
also concerned about, right now, the polling locations are pretty much all concerned about being a polling location.
Exactly.
And So we have churches and schools and fire stations, all that are not really sure that they want to move forward, plus Meadowood. So everyone's on edge and everyone's not willing to commit or say too much because they just don't know what they're getting into, which is understandable.
One of the mandates by the IEC was that we can further consolidate polling locations, precincts into polling locations. Are we working on a contingency plan that might allow us to use fewer polling stations?
With what the state has said, we could get down to 4 because we can do 1 satellite for every 25,000 registered voters. But of course, it would have to be a place that could accommodate that. In Election Central could be 1, and Ivy Tech has suggested that they might be able to do that. And we also could run 1 out of Showers, so that would be 3. We have 96,000 registered voters, so 4 would accommodate. I've talked to IU, and they're not willing to commit to that, but it is a possibility. If they're still shut down due to they're just not opening up because of the end of the school year and all, but they are discussing it. Now I know location is not best. We're not hitting Clear Creek, and we're not hitting Washington, and we're not hitting Ellettsville in that area. And I know there's going to be some concern about that for voters that are not, this is all really pretty central here in the
Correct.
city.
And I'm not saying that we should necessarily go down to 4, but we could certainly go down from 34 to a lesser number, which would both reduce our need for recruiting extra poll workers, and also just help keep that from being so much of a problem. So that's something that developing a contingency plan that would both cover the county and reduce those needs. And given that hopefully people are voting by mail, that might be enough.
Yeah, it's going to be very important that the media helps us to get the message out about people being able to vote from home and the process that's required to do that, where they must request a form that they fill out, which will in turn request that they be sent a ballot. Organizations can pass out the form to request a ballot, an absentee ballot by mail, but it's my understanding that organizations cannot pass out the ballots themselves.
This is correct. But for example, this is Carolyn again, the Democratic Party will have something in their newsletter this week about the process, about the fact that anybody now is entitled to vote by mail without excuse for this primary only, and the places to send it. And one of the other issues is that apparently everybody's getting online and finding my address and sending me their absentee ballot requests. So making sure that we have those addresses out there. I mean, I can forward them on, but it's a lot easier if they do it directly.
Yep. I've had a few of those calls and requests myself.
Yep.
This is Nicole, as have I, and I would like to just note that I, on numerous occasions, copy the Herald Times with information about absentee voting by mail, and the fact that we are incredibly fortunate to have it be no excuse for this primary, and we're not guaranteed to have that going forward. So I'm trying to get the word out to as many people as possible via the media so that we can have that. And I too get the forwards and send them on. Karen probably gets several of those from me per week with that. So we're all in the same boat on that.
Exactly. One thing I would suggest, there's some issues with the Monroe County websites. I think one of them still lists me as being the chair when I'm not. And none of them seem to have prominently both the information and where to send things. Nicole, you might edit your press list where you've given people the location to get the application, but we might also tell them where to send it. So that if, the only one that I've seen that really is fully up to date is the voter portal one, the homepage on our voter portal that has all that information. But for example, the Monroe County websites that have the clerk's office and have voter registration don't have that information on them. So getting that onto those websites, if they can be corrected from a distance, would probably be helpful to voters.
Absolutely.
Okay. We should possibly at this point repeat that we're seeking paid volunteer positions, and the pay is approximately $125 up to $165 per day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's a pretty good chunk of change. And I would encourage people to remind potential volunteers that this is a paid position. Consider it hazard pay or whatever. And we might even be able to throw in a couple pairs of rubber gloves. Hopefully by the time of the election, this will be calmed down substantially, and we'll be in a little better position than we are today. But there's no telling with this. Looks like our friends in China might be having a second go around as well. All right. Any other information or discussion on the recruitment of volunteers, Karen, or anyone else?
No, but this is Karen, and I did want to say I just went on our website, which is monroecountyvoters.us, and it's really clear. The front page, it says, if you want to vote by mail, click here, mail it into, voter registration, and we also have the form there with the no excuse, and also for registration. It's all right there as soon as you open it up. So we've been working on that website, so I'm not for sure what Carolyn saw.
Well, there are other websites through Monroe County government that talk about the election office that don't have that information on it. As I said, our one is correct, but there aren't other places where that is. For example, Nicole sent out a press release, which is on the front page of something. It has the address to download the form on it, but it doesn't tell people where to send them. And so anytime we're putting any of that information out, we should put the email address and the mailing address with that information so that voters aren't confused, because that's where they are. And I will tell you that most of the voters who seem to be Googling this are ending up somewhere else, or at least the ones that I'm hearing from are getting another page that doesn't have that information on it. So that might be something to work on.
Miss Carolyn, this is Nicole. Please know that going forward, certainly anything that I can control will go out with the right information. You can imagine that there might be other websites out there that people have accessed from years past that we didn't create, nor were we a party to, but they still have old information on there. We can control what we can control, and going forward, I will make sure that anything that comes from my office has the appropriate information. Also, Mr. Howell, I want to address what you said as far as precautions. I don't remember if I said this at last month's meeting, but just prior to everything kind of going haywire, my office was actively engaged in trying to get precautionary supplies. We were even willing to pay those outrageous prices and get a hold of hand sanitizer, standalone stands so that people could access the sanitizer, the disinfecting wipes and things like that. Some of our orders, unfortunately, were rescinded. If you read the news, it seems like there are other places that bid higher, buy it out from under you. But we now have some businesses out in the community who have stepped up and are offering us hand sanitizer. I'm not able to call all of those by name, but I am trying to get those names because I want those businesses to be acknowledged for their Herculean efforts to help us have a successful election. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of some of those other organizations in the community that have clients who must be maintained throughout this extraordinary time, have been able to get help from several different organizations in the area to get hand sanitizer. We call it home brewed hand sanitizer. And we're very appreciative of those organizations for their help.
Karen, you had something to say?
No, I'm sorry. Someone just came in and
Okay.
so it was a little different. My apologies.
Okay.
I get one more thing, Hal, but just before
Yes.
we finish, that we should probably give that information out to the public. So the address to send your ballot application to is election@co.monroe.in.us. That's the email address. And the mailing address is voter registration, 401 West 7th Street, Suite 100, Bloomington, Indiana, 47404. And those are the best places to get your application to vote by mail to. That's the fastest way we're going to get those ballots out to people.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Any other information or comments about the recruitment of volunteers? All right, Karen. Excuse me, Eric Evans. You had your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to state?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to address something that Carolyn asked a couple minutes ago with regards to updating the county website. If there are updates that need to be done to the county website, Rita Bush, who is the tech services web person, is fully operational at home. So, if you don't have the staffing to update the site yourself, just send what you want via email to Rita at rbush. So that's RBUSH at co.monroe.in.us, and she'd be happy to get things updated for you.
Thanks, Eric. That's very helpful.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. All right. Any other information on recruitment of volunteers? No. Okay, we'll move on to the new election calendar. We'll move on to the new election calendar. Karen?
Yes. What would you like to know?
Would you like to say a few words about the revised election calendar?
Sure. Every deadline that we have has been changed in reflecting the June 2nd election day. So everything basically moves back or forward, pretty much like the 28 days, kind of how it is. So a couple of important dates is voter registration ends May 4th. And that means, of course, we any registrations up till that point, and that includes anything that we receive up to 11:59 on Monday, May 4th. And another important one is May 21st. That is our last day to receive an absentee ballot application from a voter. So again, we're promoting the mail ballots tremendously, but we just need them by that time. And of course, we don't want a bunch on that day. Anytime that somebody wants it, we want them to get it in and process so we can get that ballot back to them as fast as possible. Those are probably two of the big dates that are important. That if you need that calendar, it's also on the Secretary of State. And I believe it's on our Monroe County Voters, monroecountyvoters.us. I think we put the calendar out there too.
I think I saw it, too, but I'm not sure.
You did see it.
I think so, but I there's other things out there that I might have missed. So
I know it
I've
gets pretty
accessed
hard.
it from about 20 different places. So
And and you think you've done it all, and then now you have to redo it all. And it's like, do you remember what you've done the first time or the second time or another change in between? So, but if anybody wants that calendar, they can just request it from me too, and I will email them that very quickly. I have it ready to go.
Also to just to update that, so the 21st, the deadline is 11:59. However, to be more specific, it's by close of day at the office if you are bringing it in, if the office is open by then, which we hope it will be. And it must be received in the mail that day. It can't be delivered the next day. If you email or fax your ballot application, the deadline is 11:59, but there's no guarantee that your email timestamp will say that.
That is correct.
Randy? And while we're talking about the election calendar, I'll
Yes, hear me?
sorry. Yeah, Randy?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I wasn't able to figure out how to get your attention when you were talking previously. If I could just make a couple comments.
Uh-huh.
You know, as far as I listened to the state election commission meeting last month, and in that order that they passed, they did mention accessibility on any new sites that you pick to try to accommodate. When I hear that different sites may be picked and we may be lowering the number, it makes sense to me, but I was involved in the Help America Vote Act years ago, and it took almost 5 years to get polling sites accessible. I just want to remind the group that when you're looking at new sites, if you could pay attention to the accessibility of those sites.
Absolutely.
And the requirement typically has been, my experience was people would look at a site, and if a wheelchair could get through a door, it was considered compliant with the Help America Vote Act. And in fact, there's a 13-page checkoff to make sure that a site is accessible not only for someone in a wheelchair, but someone who is visually impaired. There's a lot that goes into accessibility. And I'd like to at least forward to somebody that checklist so you have it in front of you when you're looking at a site.
Nicole and Karen both are very aware of those check sites or that checklist, and that's part of what we would be looking at.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that I stopped working on it in 2012 because pretty much all the sites were accessible. Now I'm seeing some of the sites that we did not approve are being used. The Indiana Memorial Union being one. And that was probably the worst site that we inspected back in 2012. So I understand everybody knows about it. I'm not sure everybody's always very vigilant about it. And I just want to remind people it's important for a lot of people that those sites be accessible. The other point is that the major news outlets were reporting today that this virus is actually surviving and can be transmitted in the air. And so you could walk into a room and they're saying that it can stay alive for as long as 2 hours. With that in mind, I really don't see how you can run an election this year without it simply being by mail. I think the risks you're putting to poll workers, to the public, and obviously the chance of spreading this virus like crazy in this community if we have an election. So I know that's a tough call, but I think sometimes in a crisis, make the tough call. Just announce that we're going to have only vote by mail. You know, the candidates are going door to door campaigning. They can spread the word. I think you can get the word out. But even if you don't get it to 100% of the people, public safety, I would think, would dictate that you not have an election in a traditional way and just do a vote by mail.
Well, we understand that, Randy. The problem is that it's not our decision to make. We are trying to get everybody to vote by mail as much as possible. And it's possible that the Indiana Election Division, when they meet on the 22nd, is going to make that call, but we can't do that. So we have to plan both ways, at least at the moment.
Understood.
Yeah. We'll continue to encourage voting by mail as much as we can. But people have to read between the lines between now and the 22nd when the State Commission has its meeting.
Al, before we move on, I wanted to make one more additional comment
Sure.
about the election calendar, and that's for all the candidates out there. The primary has moved, and therefore the campaign finance reporting periods have also moved. So the new end of pre-primary campaign finance reporting period is May 8th. The start of the 10-day window for filing a CFA 11 would start May 9th. And the deadline now for filing your pre-primary campaign finance reports will be on the 15th of May. So everybody needs to know that those dates have also been extended, and that's when they need to file their reports. But they still need to file them.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Are there any other issues or concerns regarding the 2020 primary that need to be brought up in front of the board at this time?
I think we'll have a lot more information after the 22nd. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we're still seeing daily executive orders coming from the governor's office, which could affect this as well. So I would expect we'll probably see something from his office before we get to the 22nd. So we'll have a pretty good idea which direction we need to go.
We did get a question from Ernest Rollins at the HT.
Okay.
It kind of fits here too, which is after I receive a ballot by mail, what's the deadline for getting those ballots back to the election office so they can count? Can you comment on that, Karen?
Okay, so getting the ballots back.
Yeah, that is on the state website at in.gov/SOS/election. There is a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Nicole. If I am not mistaken, it is 12 days prior to the election that
It's not
we
the
have pushed it.
applications.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's when do the ballots have to be received for them to be valid? And that's on primary election day. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
It would have to be in the mail on that day to be counted.
Yeah, I have
Correct.
I have the exact wording that's posted on the state site. It says all voters may choose to cast a ballot by mail in the upcoming June 2nd primary election. To request an absentee by mail ballot, please complete this form, ABS mail primary 2020, and return it to your county election officials. The deadline to return the form is May 21st by 11:59 p.m. local time.
That's the ballot application.
That's the ballot application.
Yes, but Ernest's request is, or question is, his question is, when do the ballots have to be returned in order to be valid? And that is by the close of polls on election day, correct?
Yes.
No. I believe it's Monday, June 1st at noon.
Oh, Monday at noon.
Okay, so it's the last day to receive absentee ballots of any kind. Then that deadline is noon on the June 1st.
It says noon for a voter to vote an absentee ballot in person at the office of the circuit court clerk or satellite office.
But that's in person. What about by mail? I looked too, and there's no deadline listed on the election calendar for by when the ballots have to be in by mail. So we may need to get that elucidated.
We do. I think that is noon on election day.
We do have, this is Nicole, we do check the mail at the post office and what we receive from our postman on election day. So mail does come into Election Central while we are all there on election day, and a ballot that has been received is processed by a bipartisan team at Election Central on that date. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so it would be essentially by close of the polls on election day. They could bring it to Election Central, or it needs to be in the mail on that day. Is that what I'm hearing, Nicole?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I think we always aim more for noon, though. That's getting it pretty close if they're thinking they're going to bring in 6 o'clock.
We always tell people not to wait until 6 o'clock, but technically if they came in and it's 5:59 that day, we would process that ballot. If they show up after that, or if it arrives in the mail on the 3rd, that ballot has to be discarded.
Okay.
one of the things, this is Nicole, one of the things that the public doesn't see that of course you and I all, take for granted is that pretty much we are all together on election day. So the Monroe County voting community can rest assured that if something comes in that needs to be addressed, we are in session working together to see, and we always, the three of us always err on the side of the voter's intent in an effort to get that ballot in, counted, and in processed and counted at 6:01 on election night. So certainly all of these questions will be resolved as we get more information. We are in limbo like many of the voters, waiting for the Indiana Election Commission to give us further direction, but we will all err on the side of voter intent and processing a ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And they also, just to clarify, don't discard any ballots. We have to keep them for like 22 months, even if they came in late. So just to say.
Sorry, yes, it should say that it will not be counted, but it is obviously stored.
Right.
Okay. Any additional issues concerning the 2020 primary?
Mr. Howell, if I can just say one thing, because I received
Yes.
information while we've been in this meeting. When you go to the Monroe County government website, it does come up about requesting a vote by mail, and the form is on the Monroe County website as well. Thank you.
But does it
Thank you.
say where to send that ballot or that application once it's been received? Because that's the issue. People know where to get the ballot application. They just don't know where to send it. So anywhere that has that link to the ballot application should also have where to send it.
All right.
I'll
Any
take
other
care of it.
Any other issues regarding the primary? All right, let's move on to the next issue. Karen, did we receive a check from Allison Chopra?
We did. I got
Okay.
$50 from her.
Great. All right.
I would also mention that I spoke with Steve Olin at another event before we were social distancing, and he did indicate that he had paid his fine as well.
All right. That's great. Thank you. In regard to polling sites for the 2020 election under old business, we had a request for the Ellettsville or Edgewood school, and the supervisor of the Richmond Bean Blossom Board of Education have both requested the ability to speak to the board, and I offer them an opportunity to do so at this time. So feel free to unmute yourselves and
Hello, this is Jerry Sanders. I'm superintendent at Richland Bean Blossom Community School Corporation. I have Dirk Ackerman, who is the principal at Edgewood High School, here with me. First, before we get started, just want to thank you for your hard work. I know these decisions are very difficult and troubling times, so we appreciate your efforts. We just come to you today with a proposal, a continuation of your consideration to move the election site from Edgewood High School to the Ellettsville Town Hall. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ackerman, and he's going to go over some more details of that proposal.
As I presented to you, I believe it was in December of 2018, we become further concerned about safety issues with the election being at the school, with the school open. We are the only school in the Richland Bean Blossom Township that our school district that has elections. So we're kind of unique. We're not like MCC, which I believe use several schools. It is a safety issue. It's also an issue with just accommodating people at the school that day with the bus. We have a bus lot that is right there on the same side of the building. Also, other counties, and this has actually happened since I presented to you in December of 2018. Other counties across the state are actually making a very deliberate move to move election sites out of schools right now. So I'm not asking anything more. We're not asking anything more than what other election boards in other counties are making a move to do for safety issues as well. The town, I've spoken to the town of Ellisville. They said that they actually have requested to have the election at the town hall. Parking would be very similar. Handicap accessibility would be the same. That's a 2-year-old building, so it's definitely handicap accessible. So again, we're just asking that we consider this move. When I spoke to Mr. Turner about this through email, I understand the tight timeline for the May election, and am not requesting that for the primary election. And now that it's in June, our biggest concern is the COVID-19 virus and opening up the building to that many people. If the governor has not opened schools up at that point, other than that, it would actually work at Edgewood High School. We don't have students in the building, or we have limited students in the building for different activities, and parking would not be an issue at all. So I think that barring the governor not opening up schools at all past June 2nd, that would not be an issue. But we are making this request for the election in November, asking that the board consider this for the November election.
All right.
Randy, you had a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't want to keep harping on this, but I'm going to have to. This is the Help America Vote Act again. And I'm getting more concerned the more conversations I'm hearing, because back in 2012, the decision was made that most schools were horrible as far as accessibility, because one of the main portions of that survey is that there's a 200-foot limit as far as from somebody parking to getting into the building. And when school buses are coming during the school year, that's almost impossible. And oftentimes the parking for the public is well away from the school, because you don't want cars running around driving when there's kids out. So when I hear that school is a possibility, I'm questioning whether people really do understand the Help America Vote Act. And when I hear people say, yeah, we've got the survey, we understand it, that's what I heard in 2012. And my question would be, if everybody understands it, why is the Indiana Memorial Union being used as a site when it clearly doesn't pass the Help America Vote Act? So again, what I'm hearing is what I heard in 2012 is, yeah, Randy, we understand it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But when I start hearing conversations and I start seeing sites that are not compliant, I'm a little concerned.
Let me comment a little bit on the union. So things have changed significantly back there since you looked at that in 2012. That back parking lot is now completely accessible parking. There's no general parking back there.
Oh, I've been to the union since 2012, I assure you.
I know you've been to the union, but there is no, that parking lot is completely accessible now. There is no general parking back there.
I'm not talking about the parking lot. There are 52 different criteria. Parking lot is one of them.
And we've looked at all of them.
You can't look, you can hardly get into the building. And then go on the first floor. I don't know where you're going to put your site. If it's on the first floor or the second floor, try to get a wheelchair in an elevator.
First of all, there's a direct access into the room in which we do. It's right in front of the door. And
which room is that?
There.
Which room is that?
Also an accessible door. It's at the University Club.
You can't get in the University Club within 200 feet of parking. You're not even close.
The parking lot across the street is within 200 feet.
But not to that room, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. I've been there.
It's right inside the door.
You can't get there from there. You can't. I'm not going to argue with you online on a building I've been through a dozen times, and I know more about the Help America Vote Act, I think, than most people do. You've got to picture the fact of somebody in a walker. You got to picture the fact of voters who, one voter I always met when I was working the polls was on a walker with an oxygen tank. And when you park your car, you're supposed to be within 200 feet of the polling of the poll site, and you cannot get into the IMU within 200 feet. I don't care where you park or where you put that polling site. And when you're talking about schools, you guys shouldn't even be talking about schools. It shouldn't be on the list. It was agreed to in 2012 they wouldn't be on the list. And I was afraid that after time went by and people weren't as diligent about it, is that this is going to happen, is that sites were going to slowly be brought back in that are not compliant. Now I can go and make
We're
a
not
formal
going to
request.
review the sites for this particular election, so let's discuss it at another election. We can
Actually, what I would like
with us.
what I would like to do is make a formal proposal to the board right now that you do another Help America Vote Act check, that you go out and you inspect every site you're going to use, and you do it for this election.
I think we have other things right now that we're going to worry about. We will take that under consideration.
And that's what I heard in 2012. I want to remind you, the Help America Vote Act is the law. It's not a choice, and it's not when it's convenient for you. It is
Randy,
the law.
I'm not going to argue with you about this at this meeting. It's not on the agenda. We'll talk about it at another meeting. Right now, we have more important things that we've got to deal with, dealing with this virus and how we're going to run this election.
Problem is, it's never on the agenda.
That's up to the chair, and I'm sure he will put it on the agenda. But right now, we're not going to have this argument.
We will address this issue, readdress the issue of accessibility voting at all sites, right? And it will be part of future agendas. Randy, could you please copy me on the information that you referenced? And you can reach me at halturner12@gmail.com.
Yeah, I've got your email.
Okay.
And
You're welcome.
Randy, this is Nicole Brown. You have been so incredibly helpful to me on other matters with respect to my office. When this craziness has passed, I would be honored to have lunch with you to better understand what you went through in 2012 to help inform decisions that we have to make. So I'm certainly open to being re-educated on the issues that concern you at this time.
Okay, thanks.
And since I am actively involved in at least 2 organizations that are highly concerned about this issue, I would also like to be re-educated on it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next agenda item. I'm sorry. We're still talking about the Edgewood facility for the fall.
Thank you. This is Dirk Ackerman again.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're again wanting to cooperate, and Randy brought up some issues that are very true. That when we do have a school day and we have buses, it is a major issue in our back parking lot. Again, that's the bus lot right there. So again, we're just requesting that we move the election for November. I also know that I've spoken to the town hall. I kind of made that proposal without knowing, but since then I have spoken to them, and they said they have specifically requested to have the election at the town hall. They're not open on that day. They have as many parking spots. They are definitely handicap accessible. So I assume that we could discuss not having the November election or that the June election be the last one at Edgewood High School.
Mr. Ackerman, this is Nicole Brown. I just want to ask in the spirit of compromise, because typically the building that you have in the primary is also used in the general. Are you open to any type of compromise for an e-learning day that day? Because that would address a couple of issues, not only the school not being open and making it available to us for election day, but our need for poll workers and your very talented teachers and students being available to work for us on election day and get some e-learning credit.
Nicole, number one, if we have an e-learning day, then students nor teachers would be available. They have to be on e-learning. They're required to be teaching at that time. And we do have a lot of students that help with the election. I sign all those pre-requests for absences. And so we do have a lot of students do it. And I encourage that. I was a member of Young Democrats when I should have said that, of a political party when I was a kid. So I definitely encourage kids to be involved. I don't think we have enough adults that vote, and I think that they need to learn to be involved as kids, and hopefully we can encourage more. So that would not be an option. We also have the other 3 schools that the election is not held at the other 3 schools. So again, the safety issues and the issues with, especially, I see this as being a very, very big election in November. I don't have a crystal ball, but I really think that you're going to have a very good turnout this year in November. And the second request that I would make is that I came to you in December of 2018 and made this request and did not hear back from you. And so I think that, going through the 19 election, well, there wasn't one, but I've given time for you to consider this. And I feel like that consideration maybe hasn't been given ample discussion.
All right. I would like to suggest that the election board have some further study done on this, because I don't understand all the issues, being the new kid here. I would like to then have the board have a public discussion and a public vote about doing this for the fall election.
This is Carolyn again. So I would point out that we did have this discussion, and in fact, I was very much in favor of moving to the town hall in that discussion, but it was voted on by the election board to not do so because of other concerns about safety. And I'm certainly open to revisiting that. I personally think the town hall is a good location.
Okay. Can I have a motion from the board that we have a study of the issues related to voting at the Edgewood School, and that we are able to examine the issues related to voting at the City Hall?
I don't believe we need a motion. You just need to put it on the agenda.
Okay, then so it shall be.
Can I make, this is Dirk Ackerman again,
Yes.
can I make a request to be a part of that discussion and to contribute in any way I can? And then also possibly, even if we sat down with the town council as a part of that, I would be glad to come to a meeting either virtually or in person, if that's appropriate at the time.
Okay.
And I know the town hall would be as well.
Okay. According to state law, the election board can only meet in a public meeting. And so this will have to be advertised at least 48 hours in advance. And the public will be allowed to participate with comments either in person or electronically.
Okay.
One
Thank
of
you.
the,
I really appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
yeah, Dirk, one of the things we might consider doing is, once social distancing again is gone, is doing a second site visit to town hall. We could hold a meeting there. We just need to notice it properly for the open door meetings.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good idea.
The only other thing that I want to say before you wrap this up, Mr. President, is that I don't want, if we happen to not be in agreement as far as whether or not Edgewood serves as a polling site, I don't want that to be construed as your voice not being heard. That's kind of the takeaway that I felt when I saw some of the correspondence that went across between the election board members. Your concerns have been heard.
Can I speak again?
Yes.
This is Randy Paul again.
Go ahead, Randy.
Again, I'm getting more and more frustrated the longer this conversation goes. You've got a choice in front of you of a site, the school that does not comply with the Help America Vote Act. You've got a site at Town Hall that does. What are you going to meet about whether you want to follow the law or not follow the law? You've got a clear choice here, an easy choice. I think my voice isn't being heard when we have all this discussion. You've got one site that doesn't comply to election law, and you got another site that does, and you want to meet about it? Since when do you meet about following the law? Just make the decision to move it to Town Hall.
We have to, okay. I personally am not familiar with each of those facilities, and I need to be able to understand clearly why the school is not sufficient and why the town hall is, according to the criteria that you're going to send me. And once I read that and once I understand that it is not in compliance, then my vote will be according to the law.
Fair enough.
Hi,
All right.
This is Dirk Ackerman again. I just would like to be able to respond to Nicole's, I think she's referring to an email that I had sent. That may be true, Nicole, but there was absolutely no transparency because I received no information whatsoever. So maybe I was heard, but I would have expected some type of communication, some type of correspondence. And so that's really what I was referring to in that email. Thank you.
Okay. So we will then be calling a future meeting specifically to discuss this issue. That will be an agenda item. Next, did we adequately cover the IMU PACE testing?
There's nobody in their office, so no. We'll need to postpone that.
Okay, very good. That will be open on the next meeting's agenda. Are we concluded with old business? Is there any other old business to be brought before the board?
Not that I have. Nicole?
Okay. Nicole?
I have none.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll proceed to new business. We've already reviewed the new dates for all election requirements. We are still faced with exceptional voting circumstances. There may be additional information coming out on the 22nd of May. Pending that time, I would ask that the board remain in session at the call of the chair.
I'm happy
Agreed.
with staying in session.
Okay. This will allow us to,
But
Yeah.
we can not adjourn.
right. This does not obviate any of the other legal requirements we're bound by. It simply gives us the ability to be a little fleeter of foot, I guess. Is there anything else to be brought before the board at this time?
No, again, I'll mention that the Indiana Election Division is meeting on the 22nd of April. That's their next meeting. There may be a lot more information after that, including they may make the decision to go to an all-male election, but until they've done so, we're going to have to think about ways of dealing with how to deal with having in-person and travel board absentee voting as well as by mail.
Yep. And there being no other business, then I will suspend these proceedings. Karen, did you have something you wanted to say?
It is the Indiana Election Commission that's actually meeting on the 22nd.
Sorry, commission, not division. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
I
then-
will make a motion to recess instead of adjourn.
Okay. These proceedings are recessed by my vote. Carolyn?
That's fine with me. I would like to thank Eric for setting this up for us, and also Katz for recording it.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, so we are recessed, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you. Have a good day,
Thank
everybody.
you.